Hey folks, this is Morgan from MorganOnScience.com and MetaMorgan on Twitter. And so today I want to do another question and answer for the weekly Dear Morgan column. I'm loving this. It's fun to answer your questions. It's challenging, it's interesting, and makes me think about things in new ways. And so I hope you feel the same. Please submit your questions by email, morgan@morganonscience.com. I'm happy to answer them in future episodes. I've gotten some good ones, but I can always use more questions. And I also encourage your discussion in the comments section down below this video at morganonscience.com. So today's question is from somebody who writes in and basically says, how can a faculty member deal with a situation where their four-year term with their department is expiring and basically ending, and they're not going to have a job pretty soon because they don't have any grants. They've been trying to get grants but haven't been able to get any big grants, and their department requires that in order to keep them on. So I guess the first thing I'll say is don't panic. I know most departments, I'd be surprised if they will kick somebody out after the first 4 years. I guess it may happen occasionally, but really make sure that that's the case, that your department is ready to say, okay, that's it, no R1s, no grants, you're out of here. Because I know certainly at my university and most others, they actually give often more like 6 or 7 years before they're really ready to pull the plug, at that tenure decision. And it's unfortunate that that happens, but sometimes it does happen. So, if you check with the department and they say, hey, no grants and you're out of here, well, there are a lot of ways to stay in science. Many, many, many ways. One is simply to find another situation, another job, to start applying for jobs. It depends on your publication track record and what you've been doing, but not having grants, it's more challenging to find a job, but you can still find a job. And perhaps you can actually get a grant while you're doing the job hunting. That's one possibility. So another faculty job is there. But you could also, there are many other alternatives. There are a lot of teaching jobs, both online and offline in sciences. If you want to do research, there are many research institutes that look for scientists. There are also science policy positions. A lot of those are in places like Washington, D.C., so you may or may not want to be there. But I know of people who are in those kinds of positions, science policy positions. And I think I already said science writer, but that's another big one, is being a science writer, writing about science, blogging about science, talking about science. There's definitely work to be done there. And actually probably the biggest sort of, quote, escape route that I know a lot of people take is they find a research faculty position in some other sort of tenured faculty's lab. So for example, there are people in my department who are research professors within another lab, so there may be a tenured professor there, and then the research professors in their lab, and the tenured professor is sort of the PI on a lot of the grants, and is often responsible for bringing in much of the funding, although it's expected usually that research professors will ultimately bring in some funding. But there are a lot of positions like that. There are also just staff scientist positions, both directing core facilities, but also just working in people's labs, doing staff science. So one of the things I often tell people is that, having a PI job is not everybody is cut out for that. Because really, as a PI, as I've been teaching in other videos and in the book I'm writing and in my grant writing course, you really have to learn how to be a marketer for your science, how to write and communicate about it incredibly well so that you can convince other people to give you money to do it. Some people can develop those skills more rapidly than others. I think ultimately everybody is trainable, at least to some degree, in these things, but then it becomes a question of motivation. Is that really what you want to be doing with your time? Some of us, like me, are not timid about getting up in front of an audience, getting in front of a video camera, and sitting down and writing on paper about my science. Other people are more timid and don't want to be doing that as much. And if it's just not part of your personality, it may be better to find a position where there's somebody else who's doing that kind of work for you, being the front man or the front woman, so to speak, and where you can just work in the lab and work on your science. Now, you're not going to get probably as much fame or as much fortune doing that, but you also won't have to be worrying about the funding, worrying about the grant writing, worrying about the managing of a lab either. So it's a real trade-off, but I would suggest you look at that and really evaluate what you want out of your science and out of your science career. If you want that fame and fortune, you probably will have to look for another like tenure track kind of faculty position, or at least a prominent staff scientist position at like a national lab or something. But if you're not so worried about it, definitely consider that staff position or that research faculty position as an alternative that's a little bit lower key and perhaps a bit lower pressure. So I hope that was helpful to you. There are a lot of alternatives. Make sure, don't despair. We need science, we need scientists in this country and all over the world. And so there are possibilities out there. Sometimes it just takes a while to find them. And you definitely will. So I hope that was helpful. And until next time, this is Morgan from MorganOnScience.com and MetaMorgan on Twitter. And I hope you have a great day, and I will see you tomorrow.